He stood in the doorway of our bedroom, buttoning his shirt with the slow certainty of a man commanding the universe. "You'll sleep in the guest room," he said. My suitcase sat unpacked, the air thick with another woman's expensive perfume, an unspoken confession. I didn't shed a tear. Instead, I counted 3 contracts, 2 clauses, 1 last move. When the door clicked shut, I texted my lawyer. "Prepare Plan E. Morning, 8 a.m. My name is Mara Quinn, at 34. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Calder & Finch, a logistics empire built on the unglamorous but essential work of moving things from A to B. We don't sell dreams, we sell efficiency, measured in minutes saved and dollars earned. Our headquarters are in Westfall, North Meriden, a city of steel and ambition that mirrors the man I married. My husband is Dane Calder, the 42-year-old, self-made billionaire chairman of the company. The press loves that narrative, the boy from the docks who built a Titan. They don't write about the systems I designed that made the Titan profitable. Dane has eyes the color of brushed steel and a voice that never raises, a finely calibrated instrument designed to deliver maximum impact with minimum volume. He can dismantle a person's confidence with a quiet observation about their choice of tie. He taught me that the most devastating blows are often whispered. Tonight was the annual Westfall Children's Foundation Gala, the glittering pinnacle of the city's philanthropic calendar. It was an arena where fortunes were pledged and alliances were forged under the guise of charity. I was performing my role as the COO and the supportive wife, a delicate ballet of smiling at investors while mentally calculating the supply chain impact of a new port tariff. Dane was performing, too. His stage was the center of the room. His co-star, a woman introduced as his new PR consultant. She was young, with a laugh that tinkled like breaking glass, and a hunger in her eyes I recognized because I once had it myself. He held her hand a fraction of a second too long when he introduced her to the mayor. He leaned in to hear her speak, his body angled towards hers, creating an invisible shield that left me on the outside. In every photograph, every shared glance, I was rendered non-existent, a ghost in $1,000 gown standing just outside the frame. I did not cause a scene. I smiled. I networked. I discussed fourth-quarter projections with our CFO. I operated. The ride home to our penthouse on Kingfisher Street was a study in silence. The city lights smeared against the tinted windows of the Maybach, a silent film of our success. The air inside was thick with things unsaid, a pressure that felt more suffocating than any argument. As soon as the heavy oak door closed behind us, sealing us in our glass tower overlooking the city, Dane began. He didn't yell. He never did. He spoke as if delivering a keynote address on brand synergy. "Mara, we need to discuss optics," he began, loosening his black tie as he walked towards the wet bar. The sound of a crystal stopper being lifted from a decanter was unnaturally loud in the quiet room. The brand, the Calder brand, is entering a new phase. It requires a certain narrative. I remained by the door, my clutch held tight in my hand. "And what narrative is that, Dane?" He poured 2 fingers of scotch, swirling the amber liquid. "Strength, independence, a partnership of equals, yes, but not one of codependence. It looks had." He took a sip, his steel eyes meeting mine over the rim of the glass. "What I'm saying is, we need to cultivate a sense of necessary distance. It's a strategy. It projects power. A power marriage." It was a term he'd picked up from a magazine profile about us 2 years ago. He loved it. It made our union sound like a merger, an acquisition of equals. He had the capital. I had the operational genius. It was a clean, powerful story. The problem with stories is that the author can always write a new chapter. "Distance," I repeated. My voice was flat. An operator's voice. I was assessing a logistical problem. "And what does this strategy entail?" That's when he walked past me, towards the master bedroom. He paused in the doorway, the place where he would deliver his command a few moments later. "It means we maintain separate spheres, even at home. It's for the brand. It's for the company. Then came the line, delivered with the casual authority of a man rerouting a shipment. Tonight, you'll sleep in the guest room. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't a request born of anger. It was a logistical directive, a simple, administrative act of removal. He was moving a key asset, his wife, out of the primary operational theater. He was pushing me out of the main picture, literally and figuratively. He didn't even wait for a response before he disappeared into our room, the one that was no longer mine for the night. The scent hit me then, the rich, cloying fragrance of a perfume I didn't wear, clinging to the lapel of his tuxedo jacket which he draped over a chair. It was a declaration of war disguised as a floral bouquet. My gaze swept the living area, a space so meticulously curated it looked like a feature in an architecture magazine. On the marble island separating the kitchen from the living space sat a single crystal glass, the one he'd just used. A faint, perfect arc of red stained the rim. I walked over, my heels clicking softly on the polished concrete floor. I knew my lipsticks. I cataloged them like inventory. My shades were muted. Rosewood, sable, cashmere. This was a vibrant, aggressive red, crushed cherry, the same shade the new PR consultant had been wearing. The physical evidence, the receipt for the transaction. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. The cold, sharp clarity that comes when a complex problem suddenly reveals its simple, brutal solution. My emotions were a liability. My intellect was an asset. I walked into the study, the room that was more mine than any other in this penthouse. It was paneled in dark walnut, lined with books on logistics, market theory, and corporate law. I knelt before the built-in cabinetry and ran my fingers over a specific, unmarked panel. A soft click, and a small, hidden safe was revealed. The combination was the date I finalized the operational restructure of Calder & Finch, the day I made Dane's company ruthlessly efficient and wildly profitable. Inside, beneath company share certificates and a few pieces of heirloom jewelry I never wore, was a leather-bound folder. The prenuptial agreement. It was a thick document, full of the standard protections for the wealthier party. Dane's lawyers had been ferocious. My lawyer at the time had been competent but outgunned, but I had insisted on my own contributions. I hadn't focused on alimony or assets. I had focused on behavior. I flipped past the primary document to the addendums, A, B, C, D, E, Addendum E, a single page, notarized separately 3 years ago, during a capital raise when Dane needed my signature on a personal guarantee. He had been distracted, eager to close the deal. I had been patient. The clause was titled, Moral Turpitude and Reputational Harm. It was a beautiful piece of legal architecture, inserted not by a divorce lawyer, but by a corporate litigator I'd hired for a private consultation. It stated that if one party engaged in behavior that constituted a violation of the company's own C-level ethics policy, a policy I myself had written and implemented, and if that behavior had the potential to cause material reputational harm to the Calder & Finch brand, then certain financial remedies would be triggered. It was my masterpiece. I closed the safe. The mechanism slid shut with a satisfying final thud. I pulled out my phone. My fingers were steady as I brought up the contact for Harper Vale, my personal lawyer. She was a shark who looked like a librarian. The best in Westfall. My message was short. The activation code for a plan we had war-gamed but hoped we'd never have to execute. Time to dust the clause. I didn't wait for her reply. I walked to the guest room. It was as impeccably designed and impersonal as a 5-star hotel suite. The bed was made with crisp, white linens that smelled of nothing. I lay down on top of the covers, my back perfectly straight, my hands folded on my stomach. The city lights of Westfall blinked outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a general on the eve of a battle she had been planning for years. My mind drifted back to the day we signed that prenup in a high-rise law office. The air smelled of leather and expensive coffee. Dane was impatient, checking his watch, his signature a quick, confident slash of ink. He saw it as a formality, an inconvenience on the way to closing a deal. I remembered my own signature. I had paused, looked up at him, and smiled. It was a genuine smile. Then I signed my name. Each letter a careful, deliberate stroke. He saw a wedding. I saw a merger. And in every merger, there is an exit strategy. He was so busy building his legend that he never bothered to read the fine print. The faint sound of the master bedroom door closing echoed through the penthouse. He was settling in for the night with the ghost of crushed cherry. I stared at the ceiling, my breathing even. The game was set. The first move had been his. A clumsy, arrogant advance. The board was now mine to control. Tonight, he had changed the room we slept in. Tomorrow morning, I would change the world he woke up in, lying on the starched sheets of the guest room bed. I traced the history of our merger. It was never a marriage in the traditional sense. It was a strategic consolidation. Our union was forged 7 years ago in the ashes of Dane's first major acquisition, a floundering freight company in the industrial town of Greybourne. He had the vision and the capital, or more accurately, the access to capital that his family name provided, a detail his self-made narrative conveniently omits. He saw a struggling company he could buy for pennies on the dollar. I, his then-girlfriend and a senior logistics analyst at a rival firm, saw a tangle of systemic rot, redundant routes, inefficient warehousing, and a complete lack of predictive analytics. He bought the body. I was the one who knew how to make the heartbeat. While he was being lauded on the cover of Westfall Business Journal for his bold M&A strategy, I was in a windowless office in Greybourne for 3 months, redesigning their entire operational flow. I built the system, the digital and physical architecture that would become the backbone of Calder and Finch. When it was done, the company's efficiency had increased by 40%. Dane proposed a week later. It felt less like a question of love and more like a final negotiation. He was acquiring his most valuable asset. From the beginning, I drew a hard line between my roles. The day after we returned from our surgically brief honeymoon, his legal team presented me with the standard spousal papers. I pushed them back across the table and presented my own. A formal employment contract for the position of Chief Operating Officer, complete with a salary benchmarked to the industry median, performance bonuses tied to KPIs, and a non-negotiable degree of operational autonomy. Dane was amused. He'd already commissioned a calligrapher to create stationery for the Office of the First Lady of Logistics. I told him to cancel the order. I wasn't the face of the company. I was its engine. Being a wife was a personal arrangement. Being the COO was a professional necessity for the health of his investment. Reluctantly, he agreed. He respected strength, and I had just shown him mine was not derived from his name. Our dynamic was set. Dane loved the theater of business. He craved the spotlight, the magazine covers that portrayed him as a lone visionary, the sleek profile of the Gulfstream G650s that became his corporate signature. He spoke in grand narratives of disruption and legacy, weaving beautiful lies about his humble beginnings for reporters who never bothered to check the public records of his inheritance. He was selling a story. I, on the other hand, preferred the ledger. I found comfort in the cold, hard certainty of numbers, supply chain logistics, key performance indicators, net profit margins. These were my native language. Numbers don't have egos. They don't smile for the camera or tell you what you want to hear. They present the unvarnished truth. And the truth was that Dane's vision would have remained a fantasy without my operational frameworks. He was the rainmaker. I was the one who built the reservoirs, dams, and irrigation systems to ensure not a single drop was wasted. This fundamental difference came to a head 2 years ago. I was conducting a routine audit of departmental spending when I noticed an anomaly in the marketing budget. The creative department, as they grandly called themselves, was hemorrhaging money. Their expense reports were works of fiction, with 6-figure invoices for synergistic consulting from shell corporations in the Caymans and experiential brand activations that were, in reality, lavish ski trips for the department head and his friends. It was a slush fund, disguised in the language of modern marketing. I didn't confront them. I gathered the data, compiled a 200-page report complete with flowcharts tracing the money, and presented it at the quarterly executive meeting. I systematically dismantled their entire fraudulent operation in under 15 minutes. The department head was fired by the end of the day. The rest of the team was placed on notice. I implemented a new system of triple-bid vendor contracts and algorithm-based budget oversight. The bleeding stopped overnight. That evening, Dane found me in my study, finalizing the new protocols. He leaned against the door frame, a glass of wine in his hand. "They're terrified of you down there, you know," he said, a small smile playing on his lips. "You didn't have to be so thorough." "The numbers were inefficient," I replied, not looking up from my screen. "I corrected the inefficiency." He chuckled, a low, appreciative sound. "My cold, efficient Mara." He came over and kissed the top of my head. It was meant to be a term of endearment, but it felt like a diagnosis. He saw my precision not as a strength to be celebrated, but as a personality trait to be managed, a curiosity that made his company money. It was then I realized that for our corporate marriage to survive, it needed a more robust set of bylaws. The slush fund incident was the leverage I needed. I drafted Policy L9. It was an internal governance mandate establishing a zero-tolerance code of ethics for all C-level executives. It covered everything from financial impropriety to personal conduct that could negatively impact the company's public standing. The crucial part, the engine of the entire policy, was that adherence was directly linked to the vesting of executive stock options. A confirmed violation would trigger an automatic freeze and potential forfeiture. Attached to Policy L9, like a pilot fish to a shark, was the clawback and morals clause. This was the true key to Plan E. It explicitly gave the company, upon recommendation from an independent compliance officer, the right to reclaim vested stock and bonuses in the event of gross misconduct. I presented it to the board as a necessary step to future-proof our brand integrity and align with best practices in corporate governance. They approved it unanimously. All it needed was the chairman's signature. I chose my moment carefully. It was a frantic Tuesday afternoon. Dane was trying to close a major bond issue to finance a new automated distribution center. The underwriters were demanding reams of compliance paperwork. He was on his phone with a banker from Atlas Meridian, pacing his cavernous office, waving me in impatiently. "What is it, Mara? I'm swamped." "Just the last of the governance updates for the bond issue," I said calmly, placing a thin stack of documents on his desk. Policy L9 was on top. I had attached a one-page summary. His eyes scanned it. He saw the words ethics, compliance, C-level. He nodded, seeing it as just another piece of bureaucratic armor for the deal. He picked up his heavy, custom-made fountain pen. Fine, whatever you think is best," he muttered. Still listening to the banker on his phone, he scrawled his signature, that bold, arrogant slash of ink, at the bottom of the page without reading the full text of the clawback clause. He never read the fine print. That was my job. His assistant notarized the stack. While she was busy, I discreetly switched the signed original with a copy, the version with the wet ink. The one that was undeniably authentic went with me. It has been in my private safe ever since. In the years that followed, our life continued its polished routine. We still had dinner together twice a week, discussing vision and strategy. I would listen as he talked about new markets and disruptive technologies. I listened quietly, filing away every boast, every casually mentioned risk, every whispered frustration with a regulator or a board member. I was a silent, sentient database. But the substance of our connection was gone. Love doesn't always die in a fiery explosion. Sometimes it just drains away. Slowly, silently, like a phone battery depleting in your pocket. One moment it's at 20%, then 10%, then it just goes dark without a sound, without a final warning. You're left holding a cold, dead piece of glass and metal. That's what our marriage had become, an empty shell, a beautifully designed piece of technology with no power left inside. And tonight, he had finally made it official. He had unplugged the charger. The guest room is silent, but my mind is a storm of data points clicking into place. The truth is, the crack didn't start tonight. It began as a hairline fracture weeks ago, a small anomaly in a spreadsheet that only I would ever notice. As COO, I have dashboard access to every operational metric of Calder and Finch, from fuel consumption in our trucking fleet to the server uptime in our data centers. It includes the logs for the executive car service. It was there, buried in rows of airport runs and crosstown meetings, that the pattern first emerged, a single black dot, repeating itself every Thursday afternoon for the past 3 months, a drop-off at the Halberd Hotel. The entry was always vaguely labeled urgent meeting or stakeholder outreach. The Halberd is a place of quiet luxury and discretion, with $1,000 a night suites and no corporate meeting rooms. It is not where one conducts company business. It is where one conducts affairs. The second data point was financial. A new vendor appeared on the corporate account payable ledger, Lark and Vale Public Relations. The payments were substantial, categorized under reputation management consulting. The firm was a ghost. No website, no portfolio, no public profile. The name snagged in my memory. Lark and Vale. My lawyer is Harper Vale. A coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in poorly executed cover-ups. I made a call to Harper from a burner phone. My instructions were simple. Run a corporate trace on a firm, Lark and Vale. I need to know if it's a legitimate entity. Bill the hours to my personal account, under the project name Contingency. Harper's report came back in less than 24 hours. Lark and Vale was a shell corporation, registered 6 months prior at a mail forwarding service in Delaware. It had no other clients. Its sole director was a woman whose name I recognized instantly, the tinkling laugh and hungry eyes from the gala. The PR consultant. Dane wasn't just paying for her time. He was funding her fabricated company with our company's money. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. It was a violation of basic financial controls. But the most critical alert came from the heart of the machine I built. Years ago, I implemented a compliance protocol on our internal servers. It flags and archives copies of executive communications containing certain high-risk keywords before deletion. It's a standard feature in a post-Sarbanes-Oxley world, designed to prevent evidence tampering. Dane, in his typical dismissal of back-end details, had forgotten it existed. An alert was triggered. An email, sent from Dane's account and set to auto-delete after reading, was archived in our compliance server. The subject line was the trigger. Image risk, private. The body of the email was a brief, frantic exchange with our general counsel about mitigating a potential personal branding issue. It was a thread about his affair. With these 3 pillars, the location, the money, and the digital confession, I began to collect the evidence. It was all done with the full authority of my office. This was not a wife spying on her husband. This was a COO investigating the chairman for misuse of corporate assets and potential exposure of the company to scandal. I requisitioned the driver's logs from the fleet manager. I downloaded the itemized invoices from Lark and Vale. I took screenshots of the consultant's fraudulent timesheets, which were approved, of course, by Dane himself. I even had the audio from the last several executive board meetings, recorded and transcribed as per a standing policy I had enacted for the sake of accurate minute-keeping. Every piece was collected legally, ethically, and stored in a triple encrypted folder on a private cloud server, completely firewalled from the Calder and Finch network. I was building a case, not a melodrama. And then, while cross-referencing communications from the VP of East Coast Operations to check a detail on the Lark and Vale invoices, I found something else. Something that made the affair seem like a petty distraction. It was a tangent, a stray thread in the wrong file, but I pulled on it. It was a message chain on the internal chat system, time-stamped 2 months ago. The VP, a man named Garrett, had written to his deputy, "Any update on the East Dock inspection?" The deputy's reply, "Still on hold. Boss said bury the safety report until after the Q3 numbers are locked." The words froze on my screen. Bury the safety report. East Dock was our largest warehouse on the eastern seaboard, a hub processing millions of dollars in freight every day. I dug deeper, my fingers flying across the keyboard, my heart a cold, steady drum. I bypassed standard access channels and used my top-level credentials to enter the compliance and safety archives. I found the initial incident report, a minor accident. Officially, a new forklift operator had misjudged a turn, tipping a pallet of heavy machinery. A warehouse worker had suffered a fractured leg. But the report also noted that the operator had flagged a potential hydraulic fluid leak in that model of forklift a week earlier. The maintenance request had been denied due to budgetary constraints for the quarter. This was not a minor accident. This was a systemic failure. An official safety inspection of the entire forklift fleet was mandated by our own internal protocols after any such incident. It should have happened within 48 hours. I searched for the inspection order. I found it, and attached to it, I found a subsequent internal memo. Postpone full fleet inspection until Q4. Conduct immediate single-unit review only. We cannot risk an operational slowdown at this critical juncture. At the bottom of the memo was the authorization, the digital signature of Dane Calder. A chill traced its way up my spine, colder and sharper than the sting of betrayal. The affair was a personal insult. This was a cardinal sin. This was a conscious decision to prioritize quarterly earnings over the safety of his employees. This was a direct, flagrant, and documented violation of the ethics code I had written. This was a breach of Policy L9. The air in the room seemed to thin, the silence of the penthouse suddenly roaring in my ears. The ghost of crushed cherry lipstick faded, replaced by the smell of hydraulic fluid and corporate negligence. In that moment, Plan E evolved. This was no longer just about a divorce. A marriage can be dissolved. A man's reputation can be ruined. But a company is a living entity with 4,200 employees who depend on it for their livelihoods. They came to work every day trusting that we, the people in this glass tower, were making decisions in their best interest. Dane had betrayed that trust on a fundamental level. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about a hostile takeover of the company's moral compass. This was a cleansing. I sat there, in the dark of the guest room, and a war room assembled in my mind. The campaign would be fought on 3 fronts. The first was the board. They were pragmatists. They needed to be presented with an undeniable case of financial and legal risk tied directly to the chairman. The second front was the regulators, OSHA, the SEC. A threat of official investigation would force the board's hand if they hesitated. The third, and most delicate, was reputation. The story had to be controlled. This could not be a messy public divorce. It had to be a decisive corporate action. With me positioned as the steady hand protecting the company from a rogue chairman, the affair would be the accelerant, but the safety report was the payload. I had the evidence, I had the legal framework in Policy L9, and my prenup. Now, I had the stage. I checked my calendar. The Q3 shareholder update was scheduled for Monday morning, 9 o'clock sharp. It was the perfect venue, public, official, with all key stakeholders present. Dane would walk in expecting to deliver a triumphant speech about record profits. He would be walking into an ambush he had spent years helping me build. The guest room isn't a prison. It's a command center, while Dane sleeps in the master suite, blissfully unaware. I am mobilizing an army he doesn't know exists, an army of clauses, bylaws, and financial instruments, the centerpiece of my entire strategy. The weapon I forged 3 years ago and have kept polished in secret ever since is Addendum E of our prenuptial agreement. It is a masterpiece of legal and financial warfare, disguised as a single page of fine print. Men like Dane, men who build empires on grand visions and bold risks, they despise the fine print. They leave it to their lawyers, their accountants, their COOs. They see it as tedious, unimportant, but the fine print is where the real power lies. My addendum is elegantly simple in its lethality. It creates a direct, unbreakable link between Dane's professional conduct and his personal fortune. It states that should he, as chairman of Calder and Finch, commit a verifiable breach of the company's C-level code of conduct, my policy L9, that results in, or has the high potential to result in, material reputational harm to the corporation. Two things happen immediately. First, his entire portfolio of unvested and vested stock options is frozen. He can't sell. He can't borrow against them. He can't leverage them. They become, in an instant, just numbers on a page. Second, the division of marital assets defaults to a secondary, punitive formula. Instead of a standard 50-50 split, it shifts to 70-30 in my favor, with a specific carve-out granting me controlling interest in our shared real estate holdings, including this very penthouse. The true genius of the clause, however, is in its activation mechanism. I knew that if I made myself the sole arbiter, he could argue it was the act of a vindictive spouse. So I built in a layer of corporate legitimacy. The clause is triggered not by me in my capacity as his wife, but by the Chief Compliance Officer, a role that my position as COO functionally encompasses, upon formal confirmation by the board's Independent Ethics Council. It is not a marital dispute. It is a corporate governance procedure. I am not the accuser. I am the initiator of a contractually obligated review. I remember the day I drafted it with Harper Vale. We were in her steel and glass office overlooking the Westfall River. She had read my proposed text, her pen tapping a silent rhythm on her notepad. "Mara, this is brutal," she'd said, a rare note of admiration in her voice. "But he'll never sign it if he actually reads it." She'd then smiled wryly. "Then again, when people are in love, they tend to sign things quickly." "That's not it, Harper," I replied, my gaze steady. "It's precisely because you are in love that you must sign things slowly. You have to protect the venture. This is just insurance on our merger." She hadn't fully understood then, but she had helped me craft the language to be ironclad. After it was signed and notarized separately from the main document, a key procedural step to ensure its validity, I had her commission a quiet, independent review by the top marital law expert in North Meriden. The verdict came back on a single sheet of paper, legally sound and enforceable. Policy L9 plus prenup. Addendum. It is a domino mechanism of my own design. His professional violation is the first domino. It falls and hits the material harm clause. That falls and hits the stock freeze. That falls and hits the asset redistribution. A chain reaction that will dismantle his financial standing. All triggered by a single, arrogant act of signing a memo to bury a safety report. He thought he was saving a few dollars and avoiding a logistical headache. In reality, he was lighting the fuse to his own demolition. Now, in the sterile quiet of the guest room, I begin the assembly. I open my laptop and connect to my secure server. I don't need to hunt for the evidence. It is already collated, indexed, and annotated. I create a new encrypted file, a digital dossier. It is not an emotional plea. It is a clinical report, the kind I would present to a board of directors before a hostile takeover. The cover page is simple: an inquiry into a potential breach of policy L9 and the activation of prenuptial addendum E. The body of the report is divided into 3 sections. Section 1. Financial impropriety and misuse of corporate assets, detailing the shell company Larkin Vale, complete with copies of the fraudulent invoices, bank transfer records, and Dane's digital signature on the payment authorizations. Section 2. Pattern of unaccounted executive time, which presents the executive driver logs to the Halbert Hotel, not as proof of an affair, but as a quantifiable record of time and resources spent on non-company business, constituting a breach of fiduciary duty. I am not accusing him of adultery in this document. I am accusing him of being a bad investment. Section 3 is the kill shot: willful negligence and endangerment of employee welfare. It contains the original e-stock incident report, the maintenance logs for the faulty forklift, and the damning memo, signed by Dane, ordering the postponement of the fleet-wide safety inspection. This is the linchpin. The affair and the slush fund demonstrate his character, but burying the safety report defines the material reputational harm, the potential lawsuits, the regulatory fines from OSHA, the inevitable stock price plummet when this news breaks. I quantify the projected financial damage in a final, chilling chart. The personal betrayal is merely the context for the corporate crime. When the dossier is complete, I compose a new email. My hands are perfectly still. The recipient is Lucien Dorr. Lucien is the board's independent ethics counsel, a semi-retired federal judge with a spine made of granite and a reputation for absolute incorruptibility. He is 75 years old and fears no one, least of all a billionaire chairman. He respects only one thing: procedure, and I'm about to follow it to the letter. The subject line is precise: Activation Inquiry, Clause E. The body of the email is brief and formal. Dear Judge Dorr, pursuant to the terms of Addendum E of the Calder-Quinn prenuptial agreement, and in my capacity as Chief Compliance Officer for Calder & Finch, I am formally requesting your review of the attached dossier. The evidence contained within points to a significant breach of Policy L9 by Chairman Dane Calder, which I believe constitutes sufficient grounds for material reputational harm as defined within the aforementioned addendum. I await your independent confirmation. Sincerely, Mara Quinn. I attach the encrypted dossier. I click the button to add my certified digital signature, a string of code that is more legally binding than my handwritten name. My heartbeat is as steady as a printer, laying down one line of text after another in a calm, inexorable process. I hit send. The email disappears into the digital ether, an arrow loosed in the dark, aimed at the heart of an empire. It is 11:58 p.m. My final act for the night is analog. Harper had couriered the documents to me earlier in the week, after my suspicions had solidified. I retrieve the folder from my briefcase. The document on top is titled Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. It is simple, clean, no fault. The battle would not be fought here. The battle was already won. This is merely the paperwork. I retrieve a pen from the desk, a simple black ballpoint. I sit on the edge of the perfectly made bed and, using the nightstand as a desk, I sign my name. The pen makes a soft, scratching sound on the thick paper. My hand does not shake. The weekend was a vacuum, a suspension of time between the sending of an email and the start of a war. I did not see Dane. He did not see me. We were two ghosts haunting opposite ends of a glass palace, each preparing for Monday in our own way. I spent my time sleeping, eating, and reviewing the choreography of the coming confrontation. He, I assume, spent his on the phone with his mistress and his lawyers, though for entirely the wrong reasons. Monday morning arrives, sharp and clear. The sky over Westfall is a brilliant, unforgiving blue. By 8:00 a.m., I am on the 40th floor, in the Harbor Conference Room. It is the company's cathedral of power, a long, sterile space with a wall of glass offering a god's eye view of the city and its port. A massive, polished mahogany table reflects the ceiling lights like a dark, still lake. The air is chilled to a precise 68 degrees and smells of expensive coffee and ambition. The large LED screen at the head of the table glows with the meeting's title, Q3 Shareholders Update. I take my seat to the right of the Chief Financial Officer, Aris Boone. Aris is a creature of spreadsheets and forecasts, a man whose anxiety is directly proportional to the number of variables he cannot control. He nods at me, his eyes already flicking nervously toward the screen. In front of my seat, I place 3 thick dossiers. They are bound in plain white cardstock, with no titles, no logos. They sit on the gleaming table like blocks of ice, radiating a cold significance that Aris and the other arriving board members eye with suspicion. They are props, designed to create a question before I have even spoken a word. At 8:55 a.m., Lucien Dorr arrives. The board's independent counsel moves with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who has seen everything and is impressed by nothing. He takes his seat at the far end of the table, opens a leather-bound folio, and becomes perfectly still, a statue of pure, impartial law. At precisely 9 o'clock a.m., Dane Calder walks in. He is the image of success. His suit is a custom Tom Ford. His navy tie is knotted with a perfect Windsor, and his smile is the one he reserves for magazine covers, the humble billionaire expression that is his greatest creation. It's a carefully calibrated mix of confidence and accessibility that has charmed investors and reporters for a decade. He clasps the shoulder of a major shareholder, shares a quiet joke with the head of our European division, and then takes his place at the head of the table. His eyes meet mine for a fraction of a second. There is no warmth, only a cool, dismissive confidence. He believes he has already won the silent war of the weekend. He believes I am a problem to be managed. "Good morning, everyone," he begins, his voice resonating with the easy authority he wears like his suit. "I trust you've all seen the preliminary numbers. It's been an outstanding quarter for Calder and Finch." The presentation begins. The slides click by, a parade of upward trending graphs and impressive profit margins. Eris Boone visibly relaxes as Dane masterfully spins the data into a narrative of unstoppable growth and market dominance. Dane is in his element, the charismatic conductor of a powerful orchestra. I remain motionless, my hands resting lightly on the table, my gaze fixed on the screen. I am waiting for my cue. It comes 20 minutes into the meeting. A new slide appears, a glossy stock photo of smiling, hard-hatted workers in a pristine warehouse. The title, in bold, optimistic letters, reads, "Safety Excellence, Our Commitment to Our People." A wave of bitter irony washes over me. This is the moment. I pick up the small, black remote in front of me, with a single, deliberate press of a button. The presentation freezes. Dane's voice cuts off mid-sentence. The image of the smiling workers hangs on the screen, a monument to a lie. Every head in the room turns towards me. The silence is absolute, a sudden, shocking void of sound. Dane looks at me, his smile frozen, a flicker of annoyance in his steel-colored eyes. He thinks it's a technical glitch. "Mara," he says, his tone laced with impatience. I don't look at him. I address the room. My voice is calm, clear, and devoid of emotion. It is the voice I use to announce factory closures or logistics restructures. "Chair Calder," I say, my title for him formal, creating an immediate and public distance between us. "We have a compliance matter that requires the board's immediate attention." A collective intake of breath. No one breathes. Eris Boone, beside me, looks as if he's about to have a heart attack. He stares at me, his mouth slightly agape, trying to understand what is happening. Across the table, the other executives exchange confused, alarmed glances. Dane's face hardens. The humble billionaire persona evaporates, replaced by the cold, ruthless chairman. "This is neither the time nor the place, Mara," he says, his voice dangerously low. Before I can respond, another voice, dry and authoritative, cuts through the tension from the end of the table. It is Lucian Dorr. He has not moved, but all eyes shift to him. He slowly reaches into his folio and slides a single thick manila envelope onto the center of the table. "On the contrary, Mr. Calder," Lucian says, his gaze sweeping over the board members. "I received a formal inquiry from the Chief Compliance Officer late Friday evening. I have reviewed the provided materials. Activation is recommended." Activation, the word hangs in the air. A declaration of war. A low murmur ripples through the room. Dane stares at Lucian, then at me, a dawning, furious understanding in his eyes. He has walked into a cage. I press another button on the remote. The secondary screen on the wall, previously dormant, hums to life. It does not show a graph or a bullet point. It shows a scanned document, a Calder and Finch internal memorandum. The text is stark. "Postpone full fleet inspection until Q4, and at the bottom, blown up to fill a third of the screen, is a crisp, undeniable image of Dane's digital signature." A wave of whispers breaks across the room, quiet but sharp as shattering glass. "Is that the East Dock report? He signed it? My God, he put it in writing." Dane's face is a mask of white-hot rage, but his voice is ice. He turns his full attention to me, his eyes promising a retribution I have already accounted for. "Mara," he says, the single word a threat. "We will handle this offline." I meet his gaze. I feel nothing but the cold, satisfying click of a well-laid plan locking into place. I tilt my head slightly, a gesture of polite, unyielding defiance. "It is online now," I reply. My voice is still quiet, but it carries across the silent room. I turn to the assembled board members, the shareholders, the executives. I am no longer speaking as his wife. I am speaking as the COO, the guardian of the company's operational integrity. As per SEC regulations and our own corporate bylaws, when management becomes aware of a material risk to the company's financial or operational standing, it is obligated to disclose that risk to its shareholders. The presentation on safety excellence is paused because I am now going to deliver this quarter's official risk disclosure. My risk disclosure statement lands in the silent room like a grenade. I lay out the facts with the dispassionate precision of a surgeon excising a tumor. I detail the buried safety report, the potential for catastrophic regulatory fines from OSHA, the inevitable shareholder lawsuits, and the obliteration of public trust that would follow if this were to leak out uncontrollably. I do not raise my voice. I do not use inflammatory language. I present the data on the screen. Projected financial impacts, legal precedents, reputational risk scores. It is a clinical, brutal assassination of Dane's competence as a leader. He sits at the head of the table, silent and rigid, his face a mask of controlled fury. The humble billionaire is gone, replaced by a cornered predator. He is surrounded by a board of directors whose expressions have morphed from confusion to sheer, unadulterated panic. They are not his friends. They are investors, and I have just shown them that their investment is being managed by a liability. Lucien Dor is the first to speak into the void. "A motion is in order," he states, his voice cutting through the tension. "I propose the board authorize a 72-hour, independent internal investigation into this matter, led by my office, and that pending the results. Chairman Calder temporarily stepped back from all duties related to operational oversight and safety compliance." The motion is seconded immediately. A vote is called. It is a flurry of raised hands, 8 in favor, 3 abstentions, 1 against, Dane's own. A futile gesture of defiance. It's over in less than 90 seconds. He has been neutered in his own throne room. While the board members are still processing the shock, I pivot from prosecutor to commander. The crisis is here. Now it must be managed. I turn to my left. "Aris," I say, my voice sharp and clear, "I need you and your team to model the immediate financial contingencies. Assume the worst-case scenario for fines and project a temporary 10% drop in stock value. I want a preliminary report by 4 p.m. The CFO, pale but grateful for a concrete task, nods numbly and begins tapping furiously on his tablet. "Comms team," I say, addressing our head of communications, who looks like she's seen a ghost. "Stand by. We will be issuing a press release before noon. The narrative is proactive transparency. We discovered a compliance issue, and we are taking immediate and decisive steps to rectify it. There will be no mention of the chairman by name. The focus is on the institution, not the individual." I am already moving, distributing the blank white dossiers I had placed on the table. They are no longer props. Each one is a copy of my Clean Sweep initiative, a pre-packaged crisis management plan. Inside, you will find the 3 core components of our immediate response, I announce, my voice commanding the room. 1. A full, independent safety and compliance audit of the East Dock facility, to begin within the hour. 2. The establishment of a confidential, externally managed whistleblower hotline for all employees, effective immediately. 3. A proposal to engage the crisis management firm of Sterling Cross, pending immediate board approval. Sterling Cross is the best, most expensive, and most respected crisis firm in the country. They are also Notably, not Larkin Vale. The board approves the motion in a daze. The meeting that began as Dane's triumph has become my war council. Throughout the entire proceeding, I do not mention the Halberd Hotel. I do not mention a guest room. I do not speak of lies or perfume or broken trust. I speak only of fiduciary duty, operational ethics, and shareholder value. I am not a woman scorned. I am the company's immune system, attacking a disease. By 10:30 a.m., the shell-shocked board members have dispersed, leaving me, Lucian, and a ghost-like Dane in the silent room. Dane doesn't look at me. He stares out the window at his city, a king surveying a kingdom that is no longer his. I return to my office. The time for public action is over. The time for personal execution has begun. At 10:43 a.m., I open the secure file on my desktop containing the formal trigger notice for prenuptial addendum E. I attach the one-page letter I received from Lucian Door's office just moments before. A dry, legalistic document stating that his preliminary review finds sufficient cause to proceed with an investigation into gross negligence, and that his recommendation is to enact any and all protective corporate and contractual governance clauses. I digitally sign the notice and send it via encrypted email to Dane's personal account, with copies to his attorney and to Harper Vale. The first pin has been pulled. At 11:15 a.m., my phone buzzes with a single text message from Harper. Filed. The petition for the dissolution of our marriage is now officially on the public record at the Westfall Superior Court. The second pin is pulled. At 11:20 a.m., a system notification flashes in the corner of my computer screen. It's an automated alert from the finance department server, a system I designed. Alert. Temporary hold, placed on discretionary spending authority for user D. Calder. Pending review per policy L9. The algorithm has done its job. His corporate credit cards, his ability to sign off on non-operational expenses, frozen. It's a small, symbolic shackle, but it is a shackle nonetheless. The third pin? At 11:30 a.m., I stand. The final step must be taken in person. I pick up a large manila envelope from my desk. Inside is a copy of the divorce petition and an official summons. I walk out of my office and down the silent, carpeted hallway to the corner office. The executive assistants watch me with wide, fearful eyes. No one dares to speak. I do not knock. I open the heavy oak door and step inside. Dane is standing by the window, his back to me. He is on the phone, his voice a low, furious growl. I don't care what it takes. You make this go away. He senses my presence and turns. When he sees me, his face tightens. He ends the call without a goodbye. What? He snarls. I walk toward his massive desk, the desk where he signed the policy that has undone him. There is no drama in my movements, no tremor in my hands. I am a courier delivering a package. I place the envelope squarely in the center of his desk, on top of a stack of papers he was likely reviewing for the meeting that now feels like a lifetime ago. He looks at the envelope, then at me. What is this? Service of process, I say. The legal term is cold, sterile, and final. He rips the envelope open. He pulls out the documents. His steel-colored eyes scan the first page, the legal heading, the names, Quinn V. Calder. The blood drains from his face. For the first time, I see a crack in his armor of impenetrable arrogance. It is a look of pure, uncomprehending shock. He is not looking at me as the wife he betrayed. He is looking at me as a CEO would look at a balance sheet he thought was perfect, only to discover a catastrophic, billion-dollar negative entry in a column he never knew existed, an entry that has just wiped him out. The fallout is immediate and seismic. By evening, the story has leaked, hitting the financial news wires with the force of a controlled demolition. The official line, carefully crafted by Sterling Cross and me, is there. Calder and Finch initiates internal safety review. Chairman steps back from operational oversight. But a second, more venomous narrative is already twisting around it, spreading through the gossip columns and market blogs. Divorce rumors swirl around Calder and Finch chairman. The two stories feed each other, creating a perfect storm of uncertainty. The market hates uncertainty. I am in the penthouse, packing a single suitcase, when I know the next phase of the battle has begun. I'm not running. I'm relocating to a pre-secured position. Dane, I know, will not be thinking about the press release or the rumors of our divorce. He will be thinking about a single entity, Atlas Meridian Bank, his primary lender, his financial lifeblood, his friends. I can almost hear the frantic, reassuring tone he would be using on the phone with his private banker, a man he plays golf with. He would be calling in favors, activating the credit friendliness that his name and net worth have always afforded him. He would be trying to shore up his defenses, unaware that I have already bypassed them and am attacking his supply lines. Dane's greatest vulnerability, the secret behind his billionaire persona, is one I understand better than anyone. Dane Calder is not a cash billionaire. He is a leverage billionaire. His fortune is a magnificent, glittering tower built on a foundation of debt, with his massive holdings of Calder and Finch stock acting as the collateral, his private jets, his art collection, his ability to fund a new venture with a single phone call. It all rests on the publicly perceived value of that stock and his unrestricted ability to use it as security. Addendum E of our prenup was not just about the division of assets. It was a financial nuke aimed at the heart of his leverage. The moment Judge Doerr's recommendation was activated, the clause freezing Dane's stock options went into effect, and buried in the fine print of his loan agreements with Atlas Meridian is a standard covenant, one that states the borrower must have unencumbered control of the assets pledged as collateral. By freezing his stock, I have put him in breach of contract with his own bank. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzes. It's an alert from a financial monitoring service I use. Calder and Finch after-hours trading is showing volatility. It's a small tremor, but it's enough. The bankers at Atlas Meridian, for all their golfing friendships with Dane, are not sentimentalists. They are risk managers. Their algorithms will see the stock fluctuation, factor in the news of an internal investigation, and then, the killing blow. They will see the legal notice from my lawyer informing them that their primary collateral is now legally frozen. Friendship ends where fiduciary duty begins. He arrives just before midnight. The sound of the elevator door opening is aggressive. The footsteps in the hall are heavy with rage. He storms into the master bedroom, where I'm calmly folding a few blouses into a suitcase. He looks ravaged. The perfect Tom Ford suit is rumpled. His tie is gone, and for the first time in years, his mask of serene control is gone. "What did you do?" he demands, his voice a low growl. "I initiated a corporate governance procedure," I reply, not looking at him. "Atlas just hit me with a margin call," he says, his voice cracking with disbelief. "A margin call. They're saying my loan-to-value ratio is out of balance because of this hold on my shares. They want $50 million in liquid assets by morning, or they'll start liquidating." A mild call. Then, for a bank holding $1 billion line of credit, $50 million is a gentle tap on the shoulder, but for a man with almost no liquidity, a man whose entire identity is built on a flawless image of financial invincibility, it's a dagger to the heart. "You need to call this off. Mara," he says, his tone shifting from rage to a desperate, commanding plea. "Call your lawyer, retract the trigger notice, now. We can sort out the other stuff later, but you do this now." I finally stop packing and turn to face him. I look at this man who, less than 72 hours ago, had dismissed me to the guest room like a piece of unwanted furniture. "I can't retract it, Dane," I say calmly. "But you can." He stares at me, confused. "What are you talking about?" The mechanism of Policy L9 is clear. The investigation, the sanctions, the freeze, it all stops if the executive in question takes full, public responsibility for the breach. You call a press conference. You stand up and you say you made a mistake. You say you endangered employees to protect a quarterly earnings report. You admit to the willful negligence Judge Doerr is investigating you for. You activate the policy's self-reporting clause. I let the words hang in the air. Your public confession makes the independent investigation moot. The board will be satisfied. The regulators will see you're being proactive, and the bank will see a chairman taking control of a crisis. The freeze on your stock will be lifted by noon. I have offered him an exit. It is a path paved with total humiliation, the complete destruction of his self-made visionary myth. But it is an exit. We both know he will never take it. His ego is a more powerful force than his financial instinct. He looks at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. He chooses silence. He believes he can fight this, that he can call other banks, move money, use his power to crush this, but his power was always an illusion, and I have just called his bluff. Every minute he remains silent. The interest on his debt accrues. His silence is now costing him millions. The next blow comes not from me, but from the machine I set in motion. The 72-hour internal investigation begins its work with ruthless efficiency. Sterling Cross, the PR firm, dispatches a team of forensic accountants. Their first target is the most obvious anomaly: Larkin Vale Public Relations. The accountants work through the night. They find what I already know they will find: duplicate invoices for services never rendered, wire transfers that align perfectly with the dates of Dane's trips to the Halberd Hotel, and the final, damning detail in the incorporation papers of the shell company: the director's name, the same name as the woman on his arm at the gala, listed as the sole recipient of the funds. The preliminary audit report is on the desk of every board member by 8 o'clock a.m. Tuesday. It is a dry, factual document, but it is more damning than any tabloid story. I never had to say the word affair. I never had to speak of his infidelity. The numbers told the entire story for me: a story of fraud, poor judgment, and corporate assets being used to fund a sordid romance. The institutional investors are the first to react. They are not like private shareholders. They are massive, unsentimental funds that manage the pensions of millions of workers. They prize stability and predictable governance above all else. At 8:45 a.m., an official email is sent to the entire board of Calder and Finch. It is from the legal counsel of the Reinhardt Fund, a behemoth that holds a 12% stake in our company. Their message is polite, professional, and utterly devastating. It formally requests an emergency vote to appoint an interim, non-executive chairman to oversee the company until the internal investigation is complete, citing a catastrophic failure of confidence in the current leadership. It's over. Dane's friends at the bank couldn't save him. His blustering and threats couldn't save him. Now, his own shareholders, the very foundation of his power, were moving to formally dethrone him. The king was being cast out of his own castle. The emergency shareholder meeting is convened not in our cold corporate boardroom, but in the cavernous, impersonal space of the Riverside Auditorium. The choice of venue is strategic. It's neutral ground, large enough to accommodate the required audience and, more importantly, to feel like a public tribunal. The atmosphere is thick with a tension that is part financial anxiety, part morbid curiosity. The room is a stratified society of dread. The front rows are a shark tank of financial journalists, cameras poised, pens ready to draw blood. The middle section is filled with hundreds of Calder and Finch employees, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion, whispering amongst themselves. The back rows, the seats of real power, are occupied by the silent, stone-faced representatives of the institutional investment funds. They are not here for the drama. They are here to protect their capital. I am seated in the front row, not with the board, but next to Harper Vale. I am not here as a wife or an executive, but as the company's largest individual shareholder after Dane. I am a force to be reckoned with, and my position in the room makes that clear. At precisely 9 o'clock a.m., the board files onto the stage. Dane is with them. He looks composed, his suit immaculate, his expression one of weary gravity. He has been given the courtesy of a 5-minute opening statement, a final act of professional deference that the board, advised by Lucian Dorr, knew would look better than silencing him completely. He steps to the podium, and a hush falls over the hall. He grips its sides, leaning in as if sharing a difficult but necessary truth. "Good morning," he begins, his voice resonating with practiced sincerity. "I know there are a lot of questions, a lot of rumors, and I'm here to provide clarity. What has occurred over the past few days is not a scandal. It is the result of a profound miscommunication and, I will admit, a period of overzealous compliance that has unfortunately created friction where none was necessary." He speaks of growing pains, of complex regulatory landscapes, and of streamlining our internal review processes. He paints a picture of a dynamic, fast-moving company whose innovative spirit is being stifled by bureaucratic red tape. He never mentions the safety report. He never mentions the money. He frames my actions as those of an overzealous subordinate who doesn't understand the nuances of leadership. He is attempting to gaslight a room of 400 people. I do not react. I do not scowl. I do not frown. I do not smile. I simply watch him, my expression a blank canvas onto which he can project nothing. I let him spin his narrative, let him weave his rope. He finishes his 5 minutes with a flourish of false humility. "We will get through this, and we will emerge stronger. I promise you that." A smattering of uncertain applause, mostly from the mid-level managers he personally promoted, dies out quickly in the heavy air. The moderator, a neutral third party hired for the event, opens the floor to questions. Before the first journalist can even raise a hand, I stand up. A camera flash fires, then another. "I would like to make a statement," I say. My voice is not amplified, but it carries in the acoustically perfect hall. I walk to the small secondary podium set up for shareholder comments. I am not on the stage with him. I am on the floor with everyone else. I adjust the microphone. "My name is Mara Quinn. I am the Chief Operating Officer of this company." I let the title settle in the room. "For the past 7 years, my primary directive has been to ensure the efficient and safe passage of freight across the country. But there is a second, equally important cargo we are responsible for, and that is the truth." I look out at the sea of faces, at the employees in the middle rows. We protect freight, and we protect truth. And recently, it became clear that one was being sacrificed for the other. I nod to the technician in the wings, the large screen behind the board, which had been showing the Calder and Finch logo, changes. It displays a simple line graph. The x-axis is time, spanning the last 3 years. 2 lines are plotted. One, in solid blue, trends steadily downwards. The other, in a stark, angry red, trends sharply up. "What you are looking at is a simple correlation," I explain, my voice the same calm, measured tone I use in quarterly reviews. "The blue line represents the rate of reportable safety incidents across all our facilities. As you can see, it has been in a consistent, positive decline as we've implemented stricter compliance protocols. The red line represents discretionary spending from the corporate marketing budget, specifically payments to a single, unvetted PR consultant." I pause, letting the image burn into their minds. As you can see, the spending on reputation management began to spike at the exact same time our chairman signed a memo to delay a critical safety inspection at our largest facility. We were spending more money to protect a single man's image than we were to protect our own people. A wave of murmurs sweeps through the auditorium. It is no longer a question of miscommunication. It is a picture of priorities, a picture of guilt. Before the chaos can erupt, a calm, authoritative figure stands up in the back of the room. It is the representative from the Reinhardt Fund. "In light of this information, and the preliminary report from the independent auditors," he says, his voice cutting through the noise, "the Reinhardt Fund formally seconds the motion to appoint Judge Lucian Dorr as interim, non-executive chairman, effective immediately, until a full investigation can be completed." The vote is called. It is electronic. The results displayed on the screen in real time as the large institutional investors cast their ballots. The numbers climb. 45%, 52%, 58%. The final tally locks into place. 61% yes. A sound fills the room. It is not applause. It is a single, collective sigh. The sound of 400 people exhaling a breath they didn't realize they were holding. The tension breaks. It is done. On stage, Dane stands as if turned to stone, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the percentage that has just erased him. I walk from the speaker's podium to the main stage. The board members, including a stunned heiress Boone, shrink back slightly as I approach. I ignore them. I walk to the podium where Dane is standing, a ghost at his own funeral. I do not look at him. I place another envelope on the polished wood. It is a simple, white business envelope, the same kind I would use for any interoffice memo. This is a personal matters, I say, my voice just loud enough for the podium microphone to pick it up. Inside that envelope is a fair, clean divorce settlement. It gives me what Addendum E stipulates. Nothing more, nothing less. There will be no fight, no ugly court battle. It is a non-negotiable offer based on his documented violation of a contract he signed. It ends here. I turn and walk off the stage. A blinding constellation of camera flashes erupts from the front row, capturing the image, the defeated chairman, the damning chart on the screen, and the stark white envelope that represents his final, unconditional surrender. No one claps, no one speaks. A decent, respectful silence falls over the room, the kind reserved for the end of something that was both necessary and tragic. The storm has passed. In its wake is a strange, resonant quiet. The Riverside Auditorium has been emptied. The journalists have filed their triumphant stories, and on the 40th floor of the Calder and Finch building, a new order is being established. The emergency board meeting, chaired by a grimly determined Lucian Dorr, is not about retribution. It is about repair. My first and only proposal is for the creation of the Employee Trust. I suggest that 2% of the company's reserve stock, a significant holding that had been set aside for executive bonuses, be reallocated into a long-term trust for the exclusive benefit of the 412 employees of the East Dock facility. They are the ones who bore the risk, I state simply. They are the ones who should reap the reward of our renewed commitment to them. The motion passes unanimously. It is the first act of the new Calder and Finch, a down payment on rebuilding a trust that was nearly shattered. The second act is a public cleansing. The full, unredacted safety report on the East Dock incident is published on our corporate website, available for anyone to read. Alongside it is a formal statement. It is brief and direct. It does not mention Dane Calder. It does not mention me. It is a humble admission of failure and a solemn promise to do better. The apology is signed not by an individual, but by a collective. The leadership team. It is the institution admitting its fault, cauterizing the wound so that the whole body can begin to heal. With my work at the office done for the day, and for the foreseeable future, I return one last time to the penthouse on Kingfisher Street. The silence in the vast, sun-drenched space is no longer tense. It is merely empty. The rooms feel like a museum of a life I no longer live. The scent of another woman's perfume is long gone, but so is everything else. Professional cleaners, arranged by Harper, have already been through. It is a pristine, soulless vessel waiting for its next occupant. My personal effects have been packed and sent to storage, all except for the 2 items I requested be left behind. I walk to the kitchen window, where a small terracotta pot sits in the afternoon light. I run my fingers over a leaf of the basil plant I have been tending for a year. It smells of earth and pepper and sun. A simple, living thing. I pick it up. Then I walk into the study and take the document I had framed 3 years ago down from the wall. It is not a degree or an award. It is Policy L9, the C-level code of conduct, the clean, black text on archival paper, the rules that set me free, with the basil pot in one arm and the framed policy in the other. I walk out of the penthouse and do not look back. As the elevator descends, my phone buzzes. A picture message from Harper. It's a photograph of a court document, stamped and dated. A single sentence is circled in red ink. Proceeding for dissolution of marriage accepted by the court. My thumb hovers over the keyboard for a moment, then I type my reply. Thank you. An hour later, a courier on a bicycle delivers a padded envelope to the small cafe where I'm waiting. Inside, there is no paperwork, only a single, newly cut brass key and a small, handwritten note from the realtor I'd secretly engaged 6 months ago. Welcome home. It is the key to a small, one-bedroom apartment on Alder Row, a quiet, tree-lined street in a part of the city where no one wears a $1,000 gown, a place I had bought with my own salary, a contingency plan I had named, in my private notes. Plan if, it seems if, had finally arrived. The apartment smells of fresh paint and old hardwood floors. The late afternoon sun streams through a large window that looks out not onto a skyline, but into the green leaves of a sycamore tree. There are boxes everywhere. I open the one marked kitchen. I pull out a new ceramic mug, heavy and solid in my hand. I open another and find the new mattress, still rolled in plastic, a new mattress, a new mug, a new life, a life that will not be contaminated by the lingering scent of secrets and betrayal. I am standing by the window, watching the play of light on the leaves. When my phone vibrates again, it is a text from a number I do not recognize. The message is short, riddled with the charming grammar of someone who works with their hands, not their keyboard. Boss, this is Sal from East Dock. The guys wanted me to say, thanks for fixing what scared us. We feel safe today. I read the message once, then twice. Of all the victories of the past week, the vote, the settlement, the financial upper hand, none of them land with the force of these few, simple words. This was the point, not the destruction of a man, but the protection of people, not revenge, but restoration. A quiet, profound warmth spreads through my chest, a feeling I realize I haven't felt in years. I walk over to the window that overlooks the street in the back of the building. My view is of an alley and, beyond it, the loading dock of a small distribution company, a tiny cousin to the empire I just helped reset. I watch as a truck, its brake lights hissing, pulls away from the dock. Its turn signal begins to blink. A rhythmic, amber flash. 1, 2, 3. It looks like a slow, congratulatory wink. A quiet acknowledgement from the world of logistics, the world of real things being moved from one place to another safely. A small smile touches my lips. I turn back to the boxes and find the one containing my journals. I pull out my current notebook and a pen. I flip to the page where, months ago, I had written the entry. Phase 1. Evidence. Now, I find the most recent entry, the battle plan I had activated less than a week ago. I draw a single, neat line through it. Plan E, complete. Then, underneath it, on the clean, empty space of the rest of the page, I write a new heading for the next chapter of my life. It is only 4 words long. Next, no more plans, just days. The sun is low, painting the sycamore leaves outside my window in shades of gold and amber. The city is shifting from its workday rhythm to the softer pulse of evening. My small apartment is filled with the quiet, unfamiliar sounds of a new life. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the old floorboards, the distant murmur of traffic on a street. I am just beginning to learn. The air still smells of fresh paint, a clean slate, my phone, sitting on the simple wooden table I assembled myself. Lights up, an email. It's from Dane's private account. The subject line is blank. I open it. 5 words. We can still talk. It is the last, desperate move of a king who has lost the board, but still believes the game is about his feelings. It's a plea, an order, and a threat all wrapped in the guise of conciliation. He doesn't want to talk about us. He wants to negotiate the terms of his surrender, to salvage some piece of his shattered pride from the wreckage. He believes that a conversation, the application of his personal charisma, can undo the cold, hard logic of a contract. For a moment, I feel a ghost of an emotion, not pity, but a clinical sadness for a man so profoundly incapable of understanding the language I speak. My fingers move across the screen. My reply is even shorter than his query. We did, in clauses. I hit send, There is no anger in the act, no triumph. It is simply the closing of a file, the final entry in a long and meticulously kept ledger. I delete the email thread and block his address. The negotiation is over. It was over before it began. On the table, next to my laptop, lies the final document, the fully executed marital settlement agreement, couriered over by Harper an hour ago. It requires one last signature from me to be finalized. I look at the thick stack of paper, a testament to a 7-year merger. It contains no emotional language, no accusations of infidelity or cruelty. It is a document of numbers and assets, of transfers and forfeitures, all dictated by the precise, unyielding mechanism of Addendum E. There is nothing left to argue over, nothing to barter. All that remains is the acknowledgement of a debt paid in full, a respect for the terms of the deal that arrived far too late for him, but just in time for me. I leave the papers on the table for now. I need air. I slide open the glass door to my small balcony. It is not a sprawling terrace overlooking a city of power, but a simple, wrought iron rectangle large enough for a chair and a few pots of herbs. The evening wind blows in from the west, carrying the scent of the city, damp asphalt after a street cleaning, roasting nuts from a vendor on the corner, and beneath it all, the faint, clean metallic smell of the Westfall River. It is the smell of real life, unfiltered by triple-paned glass 40 stories in the air. I lean on the railing, the cool iron a solid presence against my hands. Down below, life continues its relentless, beautiful, ordinary rhythm. A bus sighs to a halt. A couple walks by holding hands. A bicycle bell chimes. The city continues to deliver. It delivers packages, people, and produce, moving everything from A to B with an unceasing hum. Tonight, I have made my own final delivery. I have delivered myself the truth. My phone is silent. The doorbell, which I'm not even sure works, is quiet. No one is coming. No one is calling. The vast, complex machine of my former life, the endless meetings, the social obligations, the strategic dinners, the weight of a public persona, has been switched off. The silence is not an absence. It is a presence. It is the sound of freedom. I go back inside and sit at the table. I pick up my pen, the same simple ballpoint I used to sign the petition in the guest room. I pull the final page of the settlement towards me. I sign my name, Mara Quinn, in the designated space. No hesitation, no ceremony. It is the last time I will ever sign a document connected to Dane Calder. I push the papers aside and open my journal. I turn to the new, clean page under the heading I wrote yesterday. Next, no more plans, just days. I think back to the moment it all began. That quiet, arrogant command in the doorway of a room that was supposed to be mine. The finality of the guest room door clicking shut. He thought he was closing a door on me for a night. He didn't realize he was opening an exit for me, an exit into the rest of my life. I write the last line in my journal for the day. Perhaps the last line about this chapter forever. He gave me the guest room. I gave him the exit. There will be no epilogue, no checking up on the stock price, no reading the gossip columns to see who he is with now. There will be no looking back. My gaze is fixed forward, on the empty pages waiting to be filled with days, not plans. I stand and slide the glass door to the balcony shut. It moves smoothly in its track. I reach down and turn the small, simple lock. The bolt slides home with a soft, satisfying click. There is no sound of weeping, no final, dramatic slam. There is only the quiet, mechanical sound of a latch being secured, the definitive, peaceful sound of a door being closed, once and for all, by my own hand. The screen goes black, the end. And somewhere, in a penthouse high above the city, in a dishwasher's sterile heat, a single crystal glass is being washed clean, until not even a ghost of a stain remains. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm so curious to know where you're all tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let me know where you are in the world. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Mara's journey. If you enjoyed this, Please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and consider hitting that hype button to help this story reach more listeners.